everybody, welcome back to the YS channel. So, for this review, it's a little bit of a special one. This is truly one of the lost gems of the early 1980s, especially if you're a fan of like fantasy or sword and sorcery type movies. And this movie is unique and special because this ties into the origins of the evil emperor from Star Wars, aka Emperor Palpatine or Sheev Palpatine or Darth Sideous. And I'll explain near the end of this video of how this movie actually is essentially responsible for the origins of Darth Sidious in Star Wars lore. However, I'm not talking about Star Wars. I am talking about the 1981 fantasy movie known as Dragon Slayer. So, besides the fact that this movie sparks the origins of the evil Star Wars Emperor, this is also honestly, just a hidden gem of a movie overall. Having watched it myself a couple of times, I'm really surprised it didn't blow up bigger or get bigger, or I would say it had a bigger box office performance than what it did. You know, it's honestly, especially for these early 80s movies, the special effects and the storytelling is pretty breathtaking. It's on par with what we consider the classics from that era, like the King Arthur movie, even like Conan the Barbarian and other movies of a similar nature. You know, and then they really took their time with this craft to make the effects, look believable. I mean, again, this movie was from 1981, so not all the effects hold up today. Most of them do. You know, I mean, even a lot of stuff that doesn't quite hold up, the way it doesn't hold up is you can tell, like they're filming against a screen kind of thing. You know, it's kind of obvious. And the best reference I can think of is if you watch some of those old Godzilla movies, you see like Godzilla stomping through Tokyo and all the people running. You know, that's like they film the running separately from the monster stomping, and then they, kind of project that over that screen, and it creates that effect. Anyhow, with this movie, they do the same thing, but they enhance those qualities and attributes, and they're able to do that via the company known as Industrial Lights and Magic. And why that company is significant is it's an offshoot or a partner company. Honestly, I consider just a part of Lucasfilm. And of course, as you know, Lucasfilm is responsible for all the Star Wars movies. And then back in the 80s, before it was bought by fucking Disney, it was its own standalone thing, right? So Industrial Lights and Magic is responsible for the special effects of this movie. Now, with this movie, one thing that stands out besides the fact that it's the origins of Darth Sidious is it sets the gold standards for, if you're a fan of dragons and movies or just swords and dragons and all that stuff, this is really the gold standard of movies, especially for live action. So the evil dragon, which is the primary villain of this movie, known as Vermithrax Pejorative. I probably butchered that name, but just know that the evil fire-breathing dragon is the main villain of the movie. Alright. You know, the way this dragon, its design and everything, and the way they were able to portray that in live action, you can see the influence, in a lot of movies, many years into the future. And especially with the design of the damn dragon. I forget if it was Robert Rodriguez or Guillermo del Toro, one of those directors. But they call that like the gold standard. Like if you're gonna like create a movie with a dragon in it, this is like the point of reference. You should take a lot of influence from how this was done. They consider that the gold standard. I mean, of course, their opinion is subjective. And having watched it, if it's not the gold standard, it's pretty damn close. I mean, they really did a bang up job with how they were able to portray this dragon. I mean, and I'll talk more about it later on in the review. Anyhow, let's just progress on here with the plot of this movie. So again, the main plot revolves around destroying the fire-breathing dragon who's about to destroy the kingdom and all that stuff. And the main hero of the movie is Galen. He's an apprentice, mage, wizard, whatever you want to call it. Basically, he comes of age and comes into his own. He's eventually able to slay, Vermithrax. Just to give you a very quick summary of the overall plot. And of course, along the way, he has like a grand master, his teacher, sensei, whatever they want to call it, as far as it goes in the world of wizards and stuff. So, and of course, his master is killed by the dragon. Leading up to like essentially what leads up to near the final fight of the movie, and which prompts him to, come to his own. This movie takes place in a fictional medieval kingdom known as Urland, and I mean, if you want a point of reference, it's based heavily off of, medieval Great Britain. And when I say medieval Great Britain, think before what you think of as classical medieval Great Britain. It's like right before that started, and like after the Romans had left. So like in that in between phase. So if you want to just think about it in terms of fantasy, it's after Rome, but before King Arthur, right? And of course, it's its own fictional, mythical kingdom kind of thing. And this world of Urland does stand out. It's kind of dark and dreary. There's a sense of dread kind of throughout. And one of the things these filmmakers was going for is they were going for like a unique style of how to portray like a early medieval society. They threw in their own ideas, and of course they incorporated elements that are well known. They're cliches of the genre, right? You have people wearing tunics, robes, swords, shields. Those things are present, wizards, but not presented in the traditional way you would expect these things to be presented back in that time. Like the wizard doesn't wear a pointy hat, with stars and half crescents on it. And there's no knights in shining armor to speak of in this movie. There's sort of a damsel in distress, but when you think of it, like, again, I guess a good point of reference would be like Rapunzel. You get the little damsel sitting in the ivory tower, waiting for the Prince Charming to rescue her. None of that shit's present in this movie. They really try to create their own unique feel and world. To me, they succeeded. Maybe not necessarily like a grand slam home run, but this movie is well made. And then I think they did overall a really phenomenal job with it. What tweaks they could have done to it to make it even better, hard to say, but when you compare the effects, though, the best thing I compare it against would be like some of these recent Marvel movies with the really shitty CGI, like the Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania. Look how like shitty that looks compared to how good this stuff looks, and you can understand the craftsmanship that went into creating this damn movie. Now, in fact, the special effects are so well done. Industrial Lights and Magic did get an Oscar nomination, for how well they were able to portray everything, especially, of course, the goddamn dragon. Now, other than that, the plot overall is pretty A to B, right? You get introduced to Galen, right? You find out his connections. The dragon threatens Urland. His master has to go out and stop it with his help. On the way, they meet some hot chick or whatever. And then the movie plays out pretty much how you would think, for the most part. They throw in a couple other twists and turns there to kind of add some suspense and drama and whatnot, but overall everything leads to the final battle of the dragon. And the final battle with the dragon is honestly the main highlight of the movie itself, the way they were able to do it. And when I'm talking about the damn dragon, in order to bring, Vermithrax to life, there's a total of like 16 puppets, models, and stop motion figures that were used. I mean, that alone isn't revolutionary. And they do that with like the Godzilla movies. You have like the dude in the suit for most of the shots, like the money shots you see. And then they'll have like, I don't know, like a puppet or model of a giant foot for like certain close-ups, or they'll have like a head sculpt. You know, I mean, this is stuff that's done for other movies, but they were able to do this very convincingly. You know, it makes you almost think like the damn dragon's there. I mean, obviously, they're watching, you know, it's a puppet or whatever, an animatronic, but it's so well done. You're like, oh shit, that actually looks like it's there. You know, it doesn't look as clunky or hokey as some other previous like stop action, stop motion movies have been or continue to be. You know, it's more of a fluid presentation. It's smooth. It's crisp. I mean, there's certain scenes you can tell it's kind of janky and hokey, but I mean, it's 1981. What do you expect? And then the scene that really stands out, of course, is the damn final battle with the dragon. Because near the climax, they're able to wound the dragon and it crashes into this lake. And then Galen goes there and inspects the scene, and the damn dragon rises out of the water, and then the final fight commences right away. You know, and then again, the way it's shot, you almost believe that the damn guy is actually fighting a real life-size animatronic. Of course, all that's just smokes and mirrors and, you know, things, you know, movie magic. But it's a testament to how well they did it. And of course, you know, I mean, besides that, I mean, not much else to talk about necessarily other than the special effects and the fact this is just like a lost gem overall. I mean, I can see how it didn't become like a super mega hit, but the fact that this thing didn't barely broke even, if that, it's a shame. And to add to that, this movie is actually one of two joint features between Disney and Paramount. The first being 1980's Popeye, starring Robin Williams, and of course this movie, which is the last such collaboration. So this is officially a Disney movie. And at the time, and for the longest time, it was definitely the darkest movie within their catalog of movies. Like, you know, first tone-wise and depiction and everything else. And not much else in the Disney catalog really matches the dark nature and tone of the movie. Like, it's mature themes. There's even brief nudity, which is like unheard of for Disney. But, I mean, with all that thrown in there, I mean, I think Disney failed. I mean, Paramount too. They all kind of failed to properly promote it, which is kind of an issue with these joint productions. And then really, Disney, even to this day, doesn't really continue to promote it strongly. You know, I mean, they could give it a little bit better treatment than what they've given it. You know, just because it's a well-made, it's a damn good movie and it's well-made. But it's a shame. It's kind of like it was just made to be mothballed. You know, and they could have just done a better job promoting the damn movie. However, it's lived on again a strong cult following, much in the same way that the movie Krull has. And I'll say it straight up, this is much better than that movie. So there you go. I mean, it arguably should be considered a freaking classic within the genre and that of the 80s overall. But it got lost. I mean, it's not lost time necessarily because not people know about it, but you know, it could have had a much bigger following than what it did. Now, to start wrapping things up here, as I already mentioned at the start of the review, this movie is the origins of Darth Sideous within Star Wars. The reason being is there's no connections lore-wise or canon-wise between this movie and that of the Star Wars universe. What I want to point out is the actor Ian McDiarmid, who plays Darth Sideous, the evil emperor. He has a small role in this movie. And of course he gets looking, you know, annihilated by the dragon, but he does have a small role as brother Jacopus. You know, make of that what you will. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, Industrial Lights and Magic. It's an offshoot of Lucasfilm. You know, they're working on this movie. He's cast it, right? And he rubs shoulders with people within Lucasfilm via these connections. But I know he was on George Lucas's radar for a bit, on and off, and then, this firmly planted him, in a firm position within George Lucas's radar. And then, from there, he has a meeting with George Lucas and he gets cast to be the evil emperor and the main villain of 1983's Star Wars Return of the Jedi. And of course, he debuts as Darth Sideous, aka the evil emperor. And then he would maintain that role with all the Star Wars prequel movies, starting with 1999's The Phantom Menace, The Clone Wars, and then Revenge of the Sith. And then, of course, with the Disney sequel trilogy finale, Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, he comes back once again as the evil emperor. So that's the main connection there between Darth Sidious in this movie. And, jokingly, you could just call it Palpatine Begins if you want, because he plays a small bit character who dies, and then he's resurrected in the Star Wars universe using the dark side of the Force, and he comes back as the Darth Sidious. I mean, joking, but not joking. Now, to finally wrap up everything, I mean, some of the inspirations and themes for this movie, in case you haven't already figured out, they pull obviously from like The Hobbit and J.R.R. Tolkien's, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, fantasy novels, some of their fictional portrayals of dragons. The story of St. George slaying the dragon factors prominently into the themes and presentations of this movie. And it's a very heavy British cast, as is the case with a lot of these movies. So all this stuff ties in together and creates a vivid classic of a movie. So with that said, thank you for tuning into the YS channel. Greatly appreciate you all. If you don't mind, drop a like, subscribe, and until the next time, later.